Good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Rasan Harris from the Emma Bowen Foundation. We are so pleased that you decided to join us. We are trying to provide more content and opportunities for you to get to see the full field of media. We are interested in the business, the content, and the innovation of media. And today we have a great presentation, an interview from one of our Emma Bowen alumni, Rochelle Oliver, to Miss Eboni Williams, who's going to tell you how to be pretty powerful. So these are powerful conversations, how we can authentically show up in the field and make a difference with our voices. And so I welcome all the people who are aspiring Emma Bowens. Our application is open right now, so please go to our website, emmabowen.com, and apply. Tell a friend. I welcome all of our current fellows and alumni, and also welcome other professionals of color who want to be in our network. You can go to our website and sign up for the AMP network to figure out how to be engaged in these types of professional, important conversations that are going on. But without further ado, I'd love to introduce Rochelle Oliver, who is an accomplished journalist and New York Times editor, whose recent coverage about the evolution of the Jamaican beef patty ignited conversations about race, food, and diversity. Following up on that success, she decided to return to her reporting roots to cover Caribbean food and culture for the New York Times and beyond. So I just wanted to say thank you, Rochelle, for your cultural contributions, saying a special prayer for everyone in the Caribbean right now, going through all the issues of the hurricanes, but look forward to this conversation between you and Eboni.
Thank you for having me. Are we going to just go ahead and toss it to start here?
Toss it to start.
Thank you so very much for having me. Being a part of the Emma Bowen Foundation has been a cornerstone to my success, and I really couldn't be here without so many people who made sacrifices and allowed me this opportunity to be here right now to interview some other great people in our field, other people of color, and so this is really thank you for having me, and thank you for all the work that Emma Bowen Foundation has done for me and so many others. I'm happy to have Eboni Williams here. I got to learn so much about you and all the work that you've done. You are a powerhouse.
Oh, thank you.
You've done almost everything. I don't know if there's anything you haven't done, but if there isn't, you will do it.
I will do it.
Okay.
I will do it. I'm on my way.
One of the things I found so interesting, you've done radio. You were able to parlay your radio experience into this great job that you have right now with Fox News, and we'll be learning more about that. And you're an author.
Yeah, brand new book.
And your brand new book
yes,
out this year.
Yeah.
And as Rasan earlier mentioned, your book, which I also have my own here with all my little notes.
That's awesome.
Thank
you so much. I'm so excited. What do you think so far?
I think it's really great. I think pretty powerful: appearance, substance, and success. I think you were really brave for saying things that I think a lot of people will be scared of saying. One of your points, prettiness is a tool that we can use to succeed.
Yeah.
I think that growing up, and for young people who are trying to get into the industry, they hear about how it's important to dress professionally.
Yes.
They hear about how your hair should be a certain way and how you should present yourself. But you capture it in a way that I think is uniquely feminine, uniquely just coming from the perspective of being a woman of color.
Yes.
A smart woman of color.
Try.
Who grew up in a single family household. And so I was kind of wondering how you came about, how you decided to actually put this message out there.
Do this book.
Sure.
So this book was supposed, and this book is brand new. Like, this just hit the shelves Tuesday of last week. So this book is a little over a week old, so I'm excited. And this book was actually going to be called Madam President Rochelle. And it was going to be about Hillary Clinton and all of the women who have run for the White House. And when I spoke with my publishers, because anyone that writes a book will tell you it's a process, right? This doesn't just happen. And I'm very proud of my sweet book here. But It was a labor of love. This was a 2.5-year process
Wow.
of a book proposal and revisions and drafts and tearing it up and starting over and deciding what the layout was going to be like and what the themes were really going to be and how we were going to connect with readers. And throughout that long process, my publisher was like, you know, anybody could write a book detailing the women that have run for the White House, but people are really interested in your story. And that was really humbling because as much as I like to talk, and trust me, I like to talk, and I have a talk radio show 3 hours every day showing just how much that's true, it's actually a bit uncomfortable for me to talk a lot about myself. So putting my story out there and being vulnerable in that way, and as you get deeper even into the book or show, you'll see that I am no holds barred when I talk about my journey going from free lunch kid, kind of growing up with just a single mom and a bit of poverty, Section 8 housing, getting food stamps, that thing, then going and being a very proud first-generation college graduate. And I'm proud of that, but I think that says a lot, you know, that I came out of school in 2004, and from my family, that was a first. So I think that's a bit telling and gives you some context as to my background. And then going to law school, being a young litigator, I started practicing at 23. I was really young and excited about it, and realized early on in my trajectory that there were a lot of challenges along the way around what I thought that experience would be like in the reality of that experience. And I took the good and the bad, and I merged those, and then decided I wanted to transition into this media career, which was also very exciting and very ripe with challenge and setback and rejection and self-doubt and just really some things that people don't talk about when they start talking about their journey, their professional trajectory. And, you know, people like to, I think, make it look easy and make it look glossy and glamorous. And I think, really plainly stated, I think that does people a disservice, particularly our young people, and many of those watching this webinar right now. I think you need to know what you're signing up for and know that it will be worth it, but it will not be easy. And I thought that was important to detail in the book.
Yeah, it will not be easy. And one of the things I learned about you graduated high school at age 16.
I did.
And then you went straight to...
That was a big, huge geek.
So, I mean, going to your point about working hard, you put in the time for the book, you worked really hard to finish high school earlier. I mean, this is not just something you're saying now. This is something
I'm not new to this. I'm not new to this. No.
Because you're not new to this.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, because you know what? I just celebrated my 34th birthday, and that feels. Thank you. And in 34 years, which of course is still relatively young, but you look back and you start seeing all of these things that you've done, and then there's what's left that I still want to do. So yeah, from graduating school early, and people, and I talk about this in the book, why so early, why you in such a rush, and it's almost seen sometimes as a negative. Well, I was kind of raised with a mom, because she was single and I didn't have siblings. She always kind of prepared me for the worst case scenario, and for some people that feels heavy, but for me it felt encouraging. It felt like, you know what, I have an ambitious agenda. There is a lot of impact. I'm driven by impact, community impact specifically, that I want to do. I want to touch people. I want to influence people. I want to motivate people. And frankly, I don't know how much time I have on my side. So I'm a little bit in a rush to make it happen.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, especially now with the stress and the pressures of social media, where you actually can hit success very quickly, can also fade very quickly. You can be in 1 second, out the next. And I want to talk more about that. But there's something that you said in the book here, and I want to talk more about the message, because there's a lot of substance in the book, but there's also some blunt stuff about how important the
intentionality.
Pretty,
understanding and pretty, not like Miss USA pretty, or like Boris Kajo or Idris Elba pretty for a guy. Pretty in terms of just
we know your type now.
Right. Just told on myself. But pretty in the sense of just intentionality, Rochelle, that says there's not one way to wear your hair. It doesn't matter if you're straight or natural. And I talk specifically about that, especially as women and men of color, that when you live in a world that highlights this kind of singular, a little bit Eurocentric idea and construct of what's attractive and what's pretty, it's hard to feel pretty. It's hard to feel that you represent something that's going to be celebrated from a visual or aesthetic perspective. And that was a struggle I had, you know, even kind of having, and I own it in the book, a commercially acceptable look, and I'm aware of that, but still, it's, when I got into the business, it's, oh, you're pretty for a black girl, or, oh, well, you can be the black on air talent, and understanding how to navigate that, because when you're hit with that, sometimes you don't know what to do and how to respond to that, and I really talk candidly about ways that we can empower ourselves through that navigation process.
And I'd like to learn more about those tips, and if you can point to some specifically, because I think a lot of young people you know, they walk into an office, they might be the only female.
Yes.
I mean, this is journalism. We're not in the majority yet.
Yeah. And that was the same, by the way, in law and
Yes,
finance.
exactly.
You know, a lot of these corporate spaces
Mhm.
where women are just knocking it out of the park compared to historical presence, but there's still a long way to go.
There's a long way to go.
Yeah.
And so when you walk into an office, some people still might feel,
Yeah.
even as beautiful as they are, they might feel like an outsider.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they feel like they might not fit in.
Sure.
And for those people, for those young people out there who feel they're not skinny enough,
Yes.
or they feel like they're pretty, they're confident in their beauty and what they bring to the table, but when you look at the commercial definition of what pretty is, how did you navigate that? What tips do you have for young people out there who are trying to figure that out?
Sure. What I'm doing is I'm turning very quickly. I'm not going to do too much reading here, but I want to at least be able to reference for those that get the book and follow along. In the Meghan McCain chapter, Meghan was a colleague
Yes.
as of a week ago. She just left Fox News, and also obviously the daughter of Senator John McCain. But we talk about that. Meghan is not a size 02. She
Mhm.
represents a more diverse, fuller body type for the news business and television industry. And it's interesting because for her, that's what she focuses on, is the fact that
Mhm.
she's a different size, a different shape. And I look at her and I tell her, like, I see complete beauty and I see confidence and I see sexiness and I see just strong-willed, compelling energy. But I also see, and I say this, Meghan is a blue-eyed, blonde-haired, beautiful bombshell that in many ways kind of exemplifies the classic American beauty.
Yeah.
And for me, as a brown girl, I look at her as the standard, meanwhile she's looking at me like I'm some type of standard. So it's very interesting how I think, especially among women, we do that, you know, kind of to ourselves and to each other, where we project that the other is this kind of idealistic standard. And, you know, I think it's important to talk about being a woman of color. I say this on page 41. As a woman of color, particularly a black woman, it has also been difficult to feel confident in my aesthetic when so many of the messages the world receives about what's, quote, pretty is based on a Eurocentric aesthetic. This fact is responsible for generations of women struggling to find pride in their darker complexions, textured hair, or brown eyes. While there's certainly no monolithic look for all women of color, or all white women for that matter, there are very real beauty standards in our world and in our country.
Yeah.
And that's just a truth. And I think what's important, Rochelle, is that especially as young girls are trying to grapple with feeling confident and comfortable in our own skin in these corporate spaces, that we are not the majority as a gender, or even as a culture, or sometimes both, that we kind of confront that head on and find our own authentic comfortability.
Yeah. There's something that you said, I just want
Sure.
to back this up, because I underlined it. And then you were talking about your mother, who is
Yes.
your rock.
She's all I got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's been cheering you on the whole way. And you said her message was clear. Being a pretty girl could not get me into the room. So that was important, but it would, sorry, being a pretty girl could get me into the room. So that was important, but it would never keep me there.
That's right.
And so that's when you talk about sustainability.
Yeah, and that's an important lesson. And my publisher was also nervous when I wanted to title this book Pretty Powerful, because understandably it's a bit provocative, right?
Yes.
And it kind of can send this message of, you got this glamour shot cover that you're selling an easy way to success, frankly. And it's quite the opposite. As you get into the pages of this book, I quickly, in the preface actually, talk about if you think that you're going to somehow catapult to success off of your look exclusively, you're sadly mistaken and you're in for a disappointing and very short ride.
Yeah.
That is not a sustainable business method. I talk about cautionary tales as a chapter, and I talk about, and I illustrate one particular person, and a couple actually, that show just how far and fast you fall when you do that.
Yeah.
But the key is to maybe maximize whatever your look is. Short, tall, thin, larger, voluptuous, black, white, brown, blue hair, blonde hair, doesn't matter. Maximize your look, but then invest totally in the substance. Make sure that when you open your mouth, you bring the fire, you bring something compelling and substantive and knowledgeable and different. I think that's really important. Some original thoughts, some original analysis, some real authentic substantive value. I'm always concerned with being a value add. How am I advancing the conversation? There's so many, and this is something else that is a little taboo, but I'm going to say it because it's true. There's so many PhDs, MDs, JDs, MBAs, MPHs walking around because we just live in a society where advanced education, as accomplished as it is a little more accessible. So then the question becomes, how do you distinguish yourself as a very particular value add as an attorney, as a businesswoman, as a CPA, as a professor, as a financier? Those things become very important.
And you were able to do that when you were able to transition your careers. A lot of students come up to me and they ask, my teacher is saying I should go into digital media, but I really want to be on broadcast. Okay. Or I started in radio, but I really want to be on broadcast. Yeah. You're one of the people out there who was able to parlay your skills and your talent. No matter where you went, you brought your prettiness and your intelligence with you. And so I'm talking about the substance and being able to sustainability. I want to go back to the time when the George Zimmerman trial, because that was a major turning point in your career. And I want you to talk a little bit about that. Give the viewers some of that background. But what I would like to know is how you were able to turn your radio experience. You had a show for 3 hours or so?
Yeah, I was guest hosting at that time for about 3 hours a day. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you were a legal analyst at that time.
Sure.
And then Fox called.
Fox called. Basically, Fox called because, as you say, Michelle, I was just doing radio and finding my way, really relatively new to broadcasting at that point in time. And what I did, I took my background as an attorney, so that's my substance, right? And that's my thing that made me uniquely positioned as a broadcaster, and I knew that. So part of this book, Pretty Powerful, is about assessing your skill set, right? Because you can't polish and maximize what you don't know you possess. And I really believe that life deals us all particular cards. Everybody, I don't care who you are, what circumstance you were born into, everybody has some gifts. So I say something that you're just really naturally really good at. And so for me, I cultivated that into my legal prowess. And I knew that I was looking at that horrible tragedy that was the killing of young Trayvon Martin, and I was seeing it differently than some of my, well, now they're my colleagues. Then they were other people on TV I was watching. As I would watch our show, and I think this is important for the viewers to hear, I always, I think it's Malcolm Gladwell that talks a lot about kind of like visualizing yourself there and all that.
It's very Super Soul Sunday.
Very Super Soul. I know we're doing something different here.
I'm there with you, actually.
But that was very real for me. Like, so I would be watching CNN or Fox News or MSNBC, didn't matter the network, and I would see myself on that panel, literally, visually. And not only would I see it, I would think, now there's Rachel Maddow, there's Megyn Kelly, there's Greta Van Susteren, there's whatever, George Stephanopoulos. If I were there, what's the thing I would say that would add to that conversation in a way that nobody else is adding to it right now? And that is the challenge I still hold true to myself even now when I think about the next step in my career. What is it if I'm given that platform? And because that's the thing, we all want so much, right? We want the next step. We're such an ambitious, beautiful generation, I think, where we're always thinking about what's next. What are you going to do when you get what's next? Because if you try and you do it hard enough, you will get it. And then you have to be ready to step into that moment and really push the envelope and push the conversation forward. So that's what I did when I was finally called by O'Reilly's producers to come on and talk about the acquittal of George Zimmerman. And that clip still lives in infamy. It was back in 2013. I'll never forget it. It was my first cable news appearance, happened to be on and then the most watched cable news program in the country. And I was like, you know what? Everyone's talking about guilt or innocent. I said, what we need to be talking about is a broken justice system that permitted facts to be such that this jury was charged with finding justice and felt they couldn't. They felt that they didn't have the facts to really come to a reasonable conclusion around guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. So let's look at what's going on from a prosecutorial standpoint. Let's look at what's going on from a humanizing standpoint, where these jurors really struggle to connect with the deceased here. So there was another pitch, another angle that really wasn't being talked about. I found it and I maximized it. And I say in the book, but the best ways to succeed is find a need and fill it. So I'm always looking for those opportunities to find what's missing in the conversation, fill it, and drive it forward.
And I know everything you're saying makes sense, but for the viewers out there, I'm really trying to, how were you able to turn an opportunity into a new career?
Okay, so some of that, and this is where I think the work that Emma Bowman does is cannot be overstated. I'm going to read something from mine now. So I've been on a book tour, right? And I've had a few stops now, including here in Manhattan, also in Los Angeles, going to Atlanta, Chicago. You know what people keep reading to me that strikes them almost more than anything is in the acknowledgments. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I read that. That's amazing. And this is literally like the second page of the acknowledgments. All the talent, intelligence, and hard work in the world doesn't matter unless it's coupled with opportunity. I would have never been able to embark on this incredible journey without so many supporters, mentors, and professional thought partners gifting me with unimaginable life-changing opportunities. So a part of my answer is not about what I did, it's about who invested in me. and the people that saw and cultivated talent in me, but also pushed me and told me where to improve and how to really hone my skill set and how to be a better version of myself, and then facilitated those opportunities. So I would really encourage, in addition to working hard and being well read and prepared and working on your pretty power, however you want to define that, those relationships. And not just, I think when people talk about networking, they talk about establishing relationships. I'm talking about cultivating relationships. I'm talking about the follow-up. I'm talking about the monthly 6-8 week check-in to just say, this is something I recently wrote content-wise. This is my last paper. I'd like to share it with you and get your invitation for feedback, inviting criticism. Because, you know, a lot of times, Rochelle, people don't really know how to, because I know we've probably seen it at some point, you know, have a mentee, you say, well, you text your friend like, girl, you see this real old girl send me, oh, this poor brother, da-da-da. You got to let people know it's okay that you want that feedback, because anyone that's ever worked with me to this day, even my executives will tell you, from WABC to Fox News to whoever I'm working for to my publisher in this book, I want that feedback because I want to be the best, and I mean that when I say it. So tell me how to be better, because that's the only way I'm going to get to where I want to go. And I think the students, they got to start that early in their career. You can't be afraid of feedback, and you can't be afraid of constructive criticism, and you can't be afraid to be better.
That's
really important.
That's really great point.
That's so important.
You said it's not just building relationships, it's about cultivating relationships.
Absolutely. Anybody can give you a card and whoop-de-whoop and handshake and that introduction email is easy. It's the follow-up and the in case you missed it, and the, you know, most of the mentors that I talk about in my acknowledgments, I was in LA for a book signing, and God is good, and I had a packed we're standing room only facility. I still made time to go to lunch with my mentor because I still am getting feedback at this point in my career, and will continue to.
That's really, really good advice.
Yeah. This is important. Yeah.
Like going back to being, you say you have so much great stuff. I'm still processing.
No,
I'm taking down tips.
Yeah. I mean, because we all are learning from, and even that's, I'm glad you said that. Peer mentorship. I think a lot of times we think about mentorship, we think about someone having to be like so far up the chain, and some of the best feedback that I've gotten have been from peers. People, this book even is what it is, and I'm very proud of this book because of my very best friend in life, who happened to also be my developmental editor of this book, and I was able to take, you know, talk about vulnerable writing, and you know, as a journalist, that's your baby, you know, and to give my manuscript to her and say, I think it's good, but I know it can be better, and I want you to help me get it better. That is the kind of community mentorship and professional development that I think we also benefit from as a community.
Did this always come easy to you, though? I mean, you know, getting
the
feedback,
vulnerability, no.
The vulnerability, like getting criticism.
No. Like most type A individuals that really are, you know, grounded in achievement and success. You want to be perfect, and I struggle with perfectionism as well, and still manage it, and that's why I even have a chapter on that. And this, you know, I packed a lot in these 200 pages.
You really did. There's
a lot. Thank you.
Lots of good information.
Face value, chapter 8, with Kirsten Hagelin. Kirsten was Miss America 2008. And you talk about the blonde, blue-eyed, quintessential, brilliant, academic model of kind of perfection, as society would hold it up in a stereotypical sense. And Kirsten goes very deeply into how that pressure ended up putting her into a spiral of anorexia, and her struggle with that, and getting out of her own way, and understanding that perfect is the enemy of progress, and really going to that place of relinquishing that burden of perfection to find the beauty of progress. Yeah. And that's so through her story and my own, I talk about my own vulnerabilities and challenges around that. Perfection can be really damaging, that seeking of perfection.
You know, a lot of when I was reading about you and seeing how you carry yourself on television and other interviews, you never shied away from explaining where you come from, about your mother, and the challenges that you face, and the bar that was set for you. And I think that I'm kind of wondering how it feels to be at Fox, one of just a few black women. I imagine that when you walk into the room, everyone sees you. And I also imagine when you walk into the room, everyone sees you. You know, it's that sort of
duality.
Yeah. How do you navigate that space? knowing that all eyes are always on everything that you do, whether it's good or whether it's bad.
Yeah, I think that's important to note, that all eyes are on you, particularly when you're a person of color or any marginalized community in this country. Because we bear the burden, or in my case, I take it to be an honor and a privilege of collective representation. So my success is not just mine, it's a reflection of the community, and my failure is not just mine, it's a reflection of the community. Now we can talk about some of the reasons historically why that's the case, but it is the case. So I know that always. And you ask about why I'm so sharing of my story, and I think that's an important thing I want to address. I think because of the way I present visually and the way my mother very intentionally presented me visually, and I talk about in the book, I didn't have uniforms going to school, but my mother gave me a uniform. You know, I was polos, khaki shorts, penny loafers, Oxfords. Like, that was it, because she wanted me to look like a serious student, even though we were on Section 8 and food stamping and up and free lunch. She didn't want that narrative that goes along with that poverty, which is lazy, not capable academically, intellectually subpar, all of those horrible stereotypes that we assign in society, kind of inadvertently assigns to poor children. She didn't want that to burden me, so she made me look like the model student. And I think I understood at a very young age that correlation between what it looks like and what it is. Now we know it's not always the case, but people aggressively attach to what it looks like and assume it's what it is. So I understood that I looked a certain way, and people made a lot of assumptions around who I was and what I was about based off of that very intentionally cultivated look that my mother was really responsible for, and a little bit of genetics. And so when I was practicing law as a public defender, particularly, most of my clients were young men of color. They would look and see the carefully coiffed look, and they would see the degrees on the wall. And my mother was very proud of my undergrad and law degree, so she got the big obnoxious "oh well" and pictures. It was like bigger than like this life-size poster. And they said, well, it's easy for you, Miss Williams, because you probably have parents that are doctors and lawyers, and this was always going to be your life. I'm like, yo, my mom was locked up actually for a year when I was 3 years old, and we reconnected, and she is a convicted felon and was able to work really hard to rebuild her life. So this narrative that says your destiny is based off of what you were born into, it's not true. Now, it can be true if you choose to accept that as your truth, but you really do. It's not easy, and I don't mean to pretend like it's easy. That's why I really go through great lengths to talk about the challenges at depth. But it is possible, I believe, to game a rigged system, and make no doubt about it, the system is rigged, and there are people doing important work, Rochelle, around correcting the riggedness of the system and making it truly a more level playing field and an equitable society. But this book is written for in the meantime. And in the meantime, these are tools that all men and women of all cultural backgrounds and economic backgrounds can use to empower them in a very rigged system.
How do you use your background and where you come from? How do you bring that to the table every day at Fox?
It just never escapes me. I think that so much of what we do, especially now in current society's television news climate, being a storyteller has never been more important. Anybody can tell the news. We don't even need that anymore. Like, this is not the Walter Cronkite days. Nobody needs somebody sitting around at 6:30 reading a prompter of headlines. That's what Twitter's for. That's what Facebook is for. There's so many things to get the news. So now it's all about perspective. It's all about who can shape the news in a way that you can understand and connect with. And so I'm always on air looking for opportunities to tell a bit of who I am and my story and my friends' narratives and things like this to make people feel connected to these headlines in a way that matter.
Yeah, in ways that matter. One of the flip side of being vulnerable, means and being honest and being truthful. In the year that we are in right now, means that anybody can come at you at any time and say what they want to say.
Sure.
And being a woman, you know where I'm going with this. do you know where I'm going with this? Being a woman, we even get attacked even more on social media.
Sure, of course, about everything. What you look like, how you sound, the sound of your voice, and all of that. The Frank Lunch chapter, Public Opinion, talks specifically about that. And because, again, we can't run away from these unfair but actual truths. And the ways in which we're picked apart. So again, this is a in the meantime book that says until women are no longer attacked for having a high-pitched voice and all of a sudden they're screaming or yelling in a way that if a man said it in the same tonality, he's just asserting himself with authority. Until we get to that place, these are some things that I would have worked for me, I should say.
One of recently, we know how you came under a lot of scrutiny.
Yes.
And it was in August when you condemned President Trump.
Yes. Yes.
Reaction to the white nationalist rallies in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Yes.
And I want to just, for anyone who doesn't know what happened, it was all over everywhere.
A little bit.
Everyone was talking about, you know,
it's called the docket.
The docket. The docket.
Yeah.
Eboni's docket.
Eboni's docket.
That's what it's
infamous.
Yes. And you said it. You know, I just took out little excerpts here, and you were addressing. You're speaking directly to President Trump.
Yes, because I know President Trump watches Fox News on a daily basis.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, in a moment where you could have been crystal clear on where you stand on the issue of inclusion, you very intentionally chose to be ambiguous. And then you also said, you've decided that your portion of the base is so significant, so valuable, that you hesitate, even in the face of blatant, flagrant hatred, you risk turning them off and thereby crippling your political stronghold. Those are fighting words.
They're still in their feelings about it a month later.
Those are fighting words.
But I meant it. I
Yeah.
meant every word of it, and I say it again, and I stand by it. And I recall the plea. So if you're listening to this webinar, President Trump, I can ask you to take your power, because I do believe his base, and I said, will follow him to the end of the world. Yeah. I think he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, as he said, and they will still be with him. So he's actually uniquely positioned in that way to say, you know what? Your fear of what this country is going to look like as it browns itself, as it becomes more diverse around issues of religion and culture and economic structure, fear not, because if you do what you're supposed to do and you really make yourself valuable in a broad game, because this is all based in scarcity, like truly, this is what this is about. People are really afraid, and that fear turns into the nasty side of humanity, the anger, the disgust, and all this violence is all a result of people being afraid as to what a country looks like, where they used to find solace and value in things that don't have as much value anymore. You know, I talked about the depreciation of intrinsic whiteness in a way that America doesn't necessarily look like it used to look. It doesn't mean the same thing in 2017 as it did 20, 30, 40 years ago. And I think some people are afraid / angry about that. Yeah. And I think that the president can address it in a way that no one else has.
You decided to speak your truth and your thoughts. And you just said earlier that one of the things you wanted to bring to the table in media was your unique perspective that no one else was saying. And this is a clear example of one of those times where no one was saying it.
Certainly not on Fox News.
And certainly not on Fox News.
And certainly not in the packaging of Black womanhood.
Yes. Yeah. And so I'm curious to learn how you calculated that move. Because I mean, what were the steps?
It was calculated. I think that's accurate, very accurate. No one's called it that before, but you're right. So I made a decision to work at Fox News. I've worked at other news networks in the past and probably will in the future. I'm sure that's not going to be a secret or shock to anybody. But in this moment for this election, it felt important for there to be an independent Black female voice at Fox News of our generation to reflect our perspective generally. Now, I make no attempt to represent every Black person, every woman, or anything in between. But that level of representation was important because I think we need to be in all spaces. And I say that consistently. And I think that the platform to speak directly to President Trump in the way that I did during that docket was uniquely designed. It was all by design. Because if I had been at another network, I could have said those same words. It feels different. It has a different impact. And we go full circle to the beginning of this interview, Rochelle. I told you my goal is impact. So I needed to be able to have that kind of impact in that moment, particularly on the heels of Charlottesville.
And there's so many journalists who are being thrust into these sort of race conversations, the way where we haven't had them in the newsrooms before, and trying to figure out how do we talk about those. Did you talk to your boss about this, saying, hey, this is what I want to do? Did you get clearance first? If you can talk about
I can, and I will. So I'm a little bit of a renegade. I don't really do permission or clearance, right? I kind of take the attitude of I'm in this space. I elected, first of all, to leave a career in the law that I was thriving in and doing well in to pursue a media career. So I kind of feel, and I say this in the book, a little bit like I'm playing with house money, right? Because the day that comes where I don't get to assert myself in the way that I intend, in the way that I feel is valuable, I'm gone. Now I know that I say that from a position of privilege because I have a whole nother career that I can support myself with. So the long story short is, that, you know, I was called that morning, asked if I wanted to do a docket, which I do multiple times, you know, on the show. Normally they're strictly legal issues, sanctuary cities, DOJ stuff like that. I actually passed initially. I said, no, I'm no docket today. And then I kind of came to my senses like an hour later, because I'm not really a morning person, so it took till like 9 a.m. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? You got to do a docket today, actually. And I think I was a bit afraid to be very real about it, because I didn't know that I would have the words. I didn't know that I would be able to muster the right tonality in this moment that it so greatly deserved. But ultimately, that fear was outweighed by my knowledge that I had to step. If I didn't step up in that moment, why the hell was I there? It's really my attitude. So I wrote it, I edited it, and it still wasn't short enough. And then this is actually a great kind of leading point, because this goes to show you the importance of diversity in the newsroom, not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera. And again, this is where we need to be in all spaces. My producers, who are fantastic, but no one of color, said, this is great. We love that you're doing this. It's too long, and we know we don't have the sensibilities to edit it without compromising its intentionality. So I appreciate the candor, but it was disappointing because my producers should have been able to edit the docket. Instead, I had to actually go in my own pocket, pay Christina Jackson, who developmentally edited this book, to edit that docket, and we came up with something that I'm really proud of, because she was able to take it where it needed to go time-wise without losing the essence of what I wanted to say to President Trump. So that's just a note to all you webinar viewers that, you know, being in broadcast, being in front of the camera, great, it's amazing. Being a producer, being an editor, being in those spaces behind the scenes are as, if not more important, because I can't do what I do without that important editorial support in all spaces.
And we're going to be taking questions. If anyone wants to submit questions, feel free to ask. While you're thinking about what to ask and typing it in, I will ask Eboni one more question here.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy, please.
It's like talk radio.
I've read that one of the reasons why you left the legal field and moved into media is because you wanted to not just impact one person, you wanted to impact millions.
Yes.
And so I'm curious, what do you believe has been one of your greatest impacts thus far?
Okay, like on cue, perfect. Cue it. You produce the segment. So what I'm going to do now, in addition, of course, to all of the incredible feedback from young kids, particularly young kids of color, that tell me, you know, seeing me in this space and what I can offer, it feels, you know, like a motivation to them. That's kind of the obvious impact, and is as important as anything, because you can't be what you don't see, and that's a large reason why I got into the space. I wanted to offer a different representation of womanhood and of Black womanhood than I was seeing at the time. Now, we've gotten a lot better. You know, this Black Girl Magic is giving me and everybody life, right? We've got Olivia Pope and Viola Davis and Ava DuVernay, and there's also many people in the space I'm in, from Angela Rye and Simone Sanders, and it's all amazing, April Ryan, whatever. Back in 2010, when I made this transition, it was less of that. It was kind of more basketball lively, and that's fine. As I say, the Breakfast Club, it's fine. Do your thing, hustle how you hustle. But I just wanted an alternative representation for those that wanted to do it different. But here's another kind of impact, and this is from an avid Fox News viewer, a Trump supporter, who caught my docket and sent me this on social media. When you criticized the president as you did, my initial reaction was not so great. Probably more to do with the fact that the media trashes him over and over every single day, no matter how trivial it is. But over time, going over your criticism more, I came to see that you had a very legitimate point and a reason to do so. You were not simply climbing on board the hate Trump train as many have done. You were doing what media ought to do, give legitimate criticism. We all would expect the media concerning whoever in office to do the same. There's absolutely nothing wrong with criticizing our political figures on legitimate grounds, which is what you did. You got a world of hate thrown your way after the criticism. I think many perceive you to be a part of the Trump hate train, and to be honest, in our media there's a lot of unfair criticism going on. But I have also seen you be fair to the president as well. and you are not some political hype machine. So, yeah, it's a nice message, but it really made me, it affirmed the intentionality behind talking specifically to that audience, so that they could really have that to chew on in terms of food for thought and give them some perspective.
Yeah. Have any questions come in?
I am actually surprised. No questions.
Just
listen.
Do you want to give it one more second? And
oh, there's one.
Here we go.
Question.
Okay, so the question is, hi Ebony, thank you, and Emma Bowen for this webinar. I am an older student that is graduating this year and want to go into broadcasting. My school doesn't have a great program. Do you have any tips on how to gain more skills? I've been struggling getting an internship, and I know that it's important to get an internship in order to get a job after graduation.
Of course. I do have tips. That's the good news. So I actually do not come from a traditional broadcast background.
Yes.
Yeah. I never had an internship in broadcasting. So what I would offer you is the suggestion of make your own internship, quite frankly. How do you do that? Shadow. So I would find whatever market you're in, doesn't matter big market, small market, find someone. I am a big fan of the cold call. I literally now host, and I'm proud of this, I'm the first Black woman to host a talk radio program on WABC here in New York in its 100-year history. It's never happened. And the reason that it came about was because I just cold called the program manager, Craig Schwab, said, listen, I'm new in town, I come from talk radio, and I want to be in your fill-in rotation. And he invited me in, and next thing you know, 3 years later, I'm his first woman host that he's hired there. And like I said, first Black person, period, that's ever occupied a hosting role there in a full-time capacity. So that is a testimony to you to say that it doesn't have to be, you know, kind of the standard internship format, although that's excellent. I've done many of those, and they are invaluable. But you can sometimes think outside the box and not let the conventional way be your only route. I'm all about and. I don't like the word or. I like the word and. So in addition to traditional conventional internships, you can also feel the freedom to cultivate your own professional opportunity, and that's just as valuable as anything else.
Yeah, create your own path.
Of course you can. Pick up the phone, send out 1 million emails. You're going to get 1 million no's, or they're going to ignore you, but you need one yes, and I talk about that in the epilogue tremendously.
Yeah.
Just need one person to say yes to you. Change your whole trajectory.
Okay, here's the other question. Whoa, this is a good one. What is the best way to find a mentor?
Sure. You want a mentor that's going to add value. So mentorship is all about, first of all, reciprocity. I will tell you one of the biggest things you want is someone that you are developing a true relationship with. And if you really look at the root of the relation, it's about a give and a take as an exchange. Nobody wants to feel that they're always giving or investing in you, and you're not really giving or investing in return. Or worse yet, they're investing and giving to you, and you are not growing that investment. You know, you are not being a good steward of that person's time and investment into you. So I would say the best way to go about finding a mentorship, number one, is don't ask that annoying question, will you be my mentor? Sheryl Sandberg talks about that in her book, Lean In as well. It just is a little off-putting for a lot of people. What you want to do is you want to give people a reason to mentor you, quite frankly. That's what I try to do. Actually, I was talking to Maria Menounos about this on her show yesterday at Sirius XM. You want to look like an easy lift. What I mean by that is you want to look like you've done a lot of the legwork yourself. You want to look like you are taking your academics seriously, that you are taking your appearance. When you show up, you look like you're about business, like you're about trying to get it done. And that with just a little bit of cultivation, with just a little bit of polishing and fine-tuning, and again, investment in you, you could go from good to great. If you do that part, you will have people throwing themselves to mentor you, because truly that's what that looks like. Because everybody, it's a business model. Everybody wants to get in on the ground level of something that's going to be great. So you position yourself to look like you're going to be great, you will have plenty of people looking to support your ascent.
You know, there's something that I think sometimes there's a difference between goals and intention. You speak very clearly about intention, and your whole life you've been kind of following that. And I think intention is what creates paths.
100%.
Goals is that's a checklist.
It's nice. It's a nice, it's a checklist. It's kind of a thing that we say or articulate to maybe feel better about ourselves. But when you really are about that life, so to speak, and you're really about that hustle and that grind, it's all about intentionality.
Okay, so some more questions are coming in. I just want to also say thank you to, and I hope I say your name correctly, Sade. thank you for your first question, and the last question we just read came in from Star, so thank you for your question. The next one, hi, Ebony and Emma Bowen. Is this the same one we had before?
Let's go to Kathy's question.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Okay, great. So Kathy, this is from you. Oh, it's down below. Thank you. I'm really interested in broadcast journalism. In my current television journalism class, I have noticed that I do not feel confident in front of the camera. Was it challenging for you to feel comfortable and confident as a person of color in the media? And also, if yes, how do you navigate that? And how long did it take you before you felt like you belonged there? It's a great question.
Yeah. Because my knee jerk was to say, I'm not sure that I do belong still. Yeah. But I know that I'm not going anywhere. That's what I do know. And what I can tell you is I was uncomfortable in front of the camera at first. And I've been in front of the camera since I was a kid, so that's saying a lot. But it really is a practice thing. The more you're in front, now I don't even feel the camera. When that red light comes on, I don't even notice. And that's because of the practice. And so what I would tell you is to set, everybody's got a camera right here, your iPhone, set it up and force yourself to record and then watch it back until the point where you get so naturally acquainted with the lens, because that's the only difference. It's no, if we're talking and this webinar thing wasn't there, or big red camera from NBC, whatever wasn't there, it's just two women talking, or it's just me talking to myself. The camera has to become invisible to you, and it really has to feel more like a mirror of a reflection of what you're putting out coming back to you, and it really becomes like an intimate medium. Like, I think when I look at this camera, I don't know how many people are watching this webinar. I've told over 100, 150. I'm talking to one person. And I think if you approach it that way and you think of the individual that you're connecting with and not, oh my God, you know, when I was doing the Fox News Specialist, 2.5 million people are watching me, I'm nervous. I never thought that way. I was talking to one person. That docket was to one person. In that case, it's President Trump. Maybe it's to my best friend Christina. Maybe it's to my mother. And I would, when I first started, I would assign that. In fact, when I first started doing radio show, I had a little picture of my best friend because I was so kind of nervous and anxious, and I put it right there by the microphone, and I talked to her. Really, this is a true story. And I got that tip from my mentor. It's a singular mechanism. Put the picture there. Don't talk to the world. Don't talk to Los Angeles. Don't talk to New York. Talk to Christina. Yeah. And I still do that.
That's such a great tip. That was a good question. Thank you for sending that one in.
Yeah.
I know we're wrapping up, so before we finish off, please let everyone know where they can catch you and when.
Absolutely. So you can download 77 WABC podcast and catch my radio show, Curtis and Ebony, with the infamous Curtis Lee. We're here in New York, Monday through Friday, 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern. Also, I'll be on various platforms of Fox News as well. But most importantly, if any of this resonated with you, then I know that you'll love the book. Pretty powerful, Appearance, Substance, and Success on Amazon.com, Barnes & Nobles, and I'm on a book tour, so check out my social media, Eboni K. Williams on Twitter and Instagram, Ebony with an I, of course, and you'll see my book stops. I'm going to be giving away some books as well. I know that there's an incentive around this webinar as well, so you can get some books, so I'm just thrilled to share this with the community. It feels very special. And thank you for such a wonderful interview.
Thank you. Thank you for everything. Thank you to Emma Bowen Foundation.
Thank you, Emma Bowen.
All right,
such an important work. Yeah.
And I guess this wraps it up.